All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our latest L&D Philly workshop. Very excited tonight to welcome, as it came up on the screen at the perfect time, Jacqueline Hutchinson to Spring Clean Your Learning any time of year, because it is summer, but we're still going to look at spring cleaning, finding good ways to get ourselves organized. I don't know about the rest of you, but I think every organization I've walked into had files everywhere, and many that people didn't know what they were anymore or why they were there. So I had the privilege of meeting Jack a couple of months ago at the ATD conference, and had the opportunity to chat and tell her a little bit about this organization, and thought it would be a benefit to all of us to have her come speak to us. She is has her own business doing e-learning and instructional design. Easy for me to say. Wow. And as our mutual friend Karen North has reminded me, she is the e-learning pro. I think I got that right. Yes. So I'm going to turn it over to Jack to tell you a little bit more about herself and how we can all get organized and do a better job of getting our closets together.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate that. Move some things here so we can see what's happening. As Josh said, I am an e-learning instructional designer and developer. I focus on corporate solutions for organizations who need to outsource or get some help getting courses to their employees or their customers. So before we do that, we'll just do this. I'm just going to do this in just regular PowerPoint mode instead of presenter mode because I didn't test it with Josh beforehand. So.
That's what happens when you get chatting. I don't know if you wanted to, did you want to make it widescreen, or the PowerPoint's not filling the whole screen? I don't know if you wanted to maximize the window or if you have other stuff on your screen.
I have a little bit of other stuff on my screen, but
it's fine as is. I just wanted to check.
I can zoom in.
That's a little bit better,
I think. Too much?
No, it was better. It was just that I meant the whole PowerPoint window wasn't filling out the screen. It's not a widescreen ratio, but it's fine.
Okay.
You're good.
Thanks. So we're here today to talk about spring cleaning your learning closet. My company is called eLearning Pros Instructional Design Inc. I am located in a little sleepy village called Caledon Village, about an hour northwest of Toronto in Canada. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And for those of you who are watching the replay, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming. When you think of spring cleaning or think about your learning closet, you might think about how you deal with learning, where your learning is, who's responsible for it, what governance processes you might have in place. So today's agenda, in this presentation, we're going to go through discussing review cycles, what they are and what they mean to you, not necessarily just to me. We're going to document your current state or encourage you to document your current state. And I like to say content, where are you? Content everywhere, where are you content? We're going to work together to complete a shareable spreadsheet so that if you don't already have a start on organizing your information, we can start there. It's a starting point for you. You don't have to start with a blank slate and wonder what to put in it. We'll work together on that. We're going to discover the importance of governance, and then we're going to master the follow-up, which is a super important step when we're talking about cleaning out our closet, what we do, the process we follow, how we do it, and following up on courses and content. So I'm just going to dive right in. Hello, it's great to meet you. That's me. And I wore that scarf just for Kara. Since we just have a small group of us today, why don't we start with some introductions from you? If you can tell me what you do in terms of learning and development, what's your role, and maybe what a struggle might be for you we can just have a conversation before we begin. So Angel, you're at the top of my screen. We all know Josh. So Angel, you're at the top of my screen. Do you want to go ahead?
All right, so I'm currently working for Johnson & Johnson at a small manufacturing plant in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And so my full title is super long, but I, I focus mostly on the learning. I'm learning and doc management, but I focus most on the learning piece of it. And so part of that is administrating a learning management system. So that's a piece of my job. The other piece is reviewing materials to make sure they're instructionally sound. So that's generally what I'm doing there.
Awesome.
So we have some things baked into our learning management system that force us to review content in there every so often, but I can tell you we have a bunch of other content on our SharePoint that does not follow the same rules.
Okay.
So managing that could be something, but that's a struggle to manage that.
And so do you ever have any legislative requirements to ensure that staff are trained and to be able to find those resources so you can confirm that they've had the training and what was in the training?
Yeah, so it's all compliance and regulatory. So yeah, so every time the FDA comes in, they don't always ask us, surprisingly, they don't always ask us for materials. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but they always ask for employee records, random sampling records. But you have to, if they ask for the materials, you need to be able to produce them. So that's what you don't want any delay in getting that.
Exactly. Exactly. Good. I'm glad you recognize that. So that's wonderful. Liz, I know your screen is off, but if you have a moment, do you want to let me know
Sure.
who you are, what you do?
I am here. Let me see. Yeah, I'm partially here. Hi, I'm going to turn my camera off, but I am I work for Einstein Healthcare Network in the Philadelphia area, which is a hospital network with 9,000 employees. I am the only one with instructional designer in my title. My title is senior instructional designer, but I call it senior and only instructional designer. So I'm in charge of like almost all of our content curation that doesn't have anything to do with the electronic medical record. There are other trainers on my team who handle that and know where it all is. I do some LMS administration, but I'm not the one, where we just merged with Jefferson, and so now we're in a new LMS for us, but there are other people who Jefferson has organized how the system works and how it functions, and we are just fitting our stuff in using their guidelines.
Okay.
They're going to be changing their LMS again in another 2.5 years, so I don't know what will happen then.
This will be a good prep work for you then. If you've already got some standards in place, this will help you keep your content organized before you send it over into that other team to manage that.
Yeah, and I use OneDrive, and I have found that to be a pretty robust way of keeping organized.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Beverly, hi, welcome.
Hi, I've been sick, so I apologize ahead of time for coughing. I work for a small human service organization right outside of Philadelphia, and I could mimic a lot of what Angel said. I have LMS responsibilities, and you asked what my biggest headache is. I inherited the way somebody else thought and set up the LMS, and so it's frustrating because I don't think the data is clean. I'm a generalist as far as training is concerned. I do everything nuts to bolts. I'm primarily compliance oriented.
Okay, awesome. Well, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. And I see that Janet's joining us and connecting to audio. So perhaps.
I can give you a quick answer to that anyway, too, to
Go ahead.
help, and then we can maybe ask her. But so, as of late, I'm doing mostly design and creation of content for proprietary SaaS system. One of the things in looking at like file organization and stuff too. So I don't get involved with the LMS, thankfully. There's a lot of files in there, and yeah, there is regulatory compliance needs out of the LMS that I know other members of my team are actively engaged in. I think one of the challenges, and I don't know if this goes, I'm hearing different systems, and I think that's interesting. We use Google Drive in our current company, where we're at now, and
Mhm.
I love Google Drive for my personal files, but in a team environment, I find it challenging because anybody can kind of move things around, and there's in some cases it's helpful with versioning, but I think the other thing in any kind of file system, what I'm starting to figure out is even when, especially course development, there's no standardization within the folders. So you have a course and your content. So we're starting a style guide, and some of that I've been trying to create a file hierarchy to follow so that whenever you open any course, you can find the assets.
Awesome.
But and to give credit, I stole it from TechSmith. They had a sample for Camtasia that had a layout and at least gave me the start. I'm like, that's a really good idea. I changed some of the names, but the idea remains. So
Oh, that's awesome.
bonus to them.
You just made me think of something that I can share also with everyone, and that's a file structure. So I will find my folder. Documents. Janet, hi, I'm Jacqueline. Do you want to just take a minute and let me know who you are, what you do, and kind of your challenges with learning and learning content?
Sure. So I am an instructional designer at the Bayview Lakeview Asset Management, and I'm a manager. So we have a library of training content. I'm curious to see what you could offer, because right now the issue is expired content is still living there and nobody's using it. And so how do we keep control of that? Because it's you make updates, you think you're cleaning up behind yourself.
Yep.
We use SharePoint to host it, and to the e-learning point, we create it on demand for an immediate need, but then is it really used?
Right.
Uh,
We're going to talk about some of that today for sure. So while I'm thinking of it, I just want to talk about my folder structure when I'm creating learning projects. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I can share this. So let me just stop sharing this. I'm going to start sharing this because I have 3 things I want to share with you this evening. Share. Okay, so are you able to see my structure?
Yeah, we're seeing File Explorer or
Okay, perfect.
whatever that is.
So I have an archive file. As I'm working with files, I keep everything that I have that I'm working on. And so every day I will rename it with the day, and the non-active item goes into my archive. And I keep the archive because I've been burned so many times when I've lost a drive or lost connectivity to the internet or whatever, and I've lost something. I've had to go back to the previous day. So I keep an archive of everything, all of the attachments, so any PDFs or Word documents that might be attached to my learning, anything that's an add-on. I keep the audio in its own file. The course files are anything that I'm currently working on. So if it's a storyline file that I'm working on, the course file will go in there, or Camtasia. If I have any custom fonts from my clients, then I have to put them in the font folder because I need to hand this off back to the client. I don't own anything. Everything I work on always goes back to the client. So this folder just gets zipped up and sent to the client. So I return their fonts and everything. But if I have to hand this off to someone else, as has happened, I have my fonts organized. I have all the images organized. There's a final published folder, so it's very clear what's in it. And that is the final sign off. It's been tested in SCORM Cloud or in the Sandbox LMS. And the SCORM file goes there, dated, named appropriately. Any publishing files I have, I will delete them after. So this is the only folder that gets deleted because I don't want to keep any of those SCORM files. I can get confused easily with the SCORM files. Any scripts for narration, any additional source files. So if they give me a big whack of PDFs and presentations, they all go into the source files, and any videos that I might need to pull from, which includes any animations that I create. So that's my folder structure. And that is the start of helping me be organized with my spring cleaning. Okay, so now we'll come back here. Hopefully.
Jacqueline, do you mind? I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When you work during the day, I assume those same folders on some kind of an internet cloud-based system, and as you close down for the day, you save everything a second time on your hard drive?
Really great question. So I work off a server. I have actually 2 servers in my home. And so I have servers that I work off of, but as I'm working through the day, I also use OneDrive, Microsoft OneDrive. So I have a OneDrive that's dedicated. I move the folder so that I have access to everything. Some of my files, you have to move to the desktop to work on them. You can't work on them from OneDrive. So I get in the habit of, in the morning, moving the folder to my desktop, in the evening, moving that folder back into my OneDrive or back onto my hard drive.
Yeah, I do that with
my server.
Storyline when I'm working remotely. But
Yes.
yeah, I hadn't thought to do it with everything, but it's something I'd consider.
Well, I do it because my internet here is not really great. I live in the country and I lose connectivity quite often. So I want to ensure that I can continue to work if I don't have internet. So I just make sure that everything is, and I want redundancy. For me, redundancy is really important. I can't lose any of my files. I can't lose a hard drive and then say, oh, my hard drive died and now I don't have anything to give to my clients. So I can't tell you the amount of money and the amount of time I've spent sending hard drives out to be repaired or to try to have them saved and have information taken off of it. So that's why I implemented a server solution. My servers are 2 Synology servers, and they're connected right up through my internet into my computer. When I go away, I don't have to put everything in OneDrive and use up all my OneDrive space. I can share my Synology as I leave the house. So then I can just access everything off the server as if I'm at home. And then when I get home, I just shut that down. So Synology is really cool. It's a really cool piece of equipment. The last one I just bought, just in case anyone is wondering who watches this later. I have a 5-bay, I have a 4-bay and a 5-bay server system. So my second server just purchased this spring, and the hard drives were the most expensive part of the whole server.
And do you have a cooling room for all of that as well now?
I do, yeah.
Wow, do you really?
Yep, downstairs, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes, yes. My husband's also a little bit of a technophile, so he looks after me. Okay, so I want to start this by asking you, what would happen if? I have 2 scenarios. The first scenario is, what would happen if your CEO is suddenly taken so ill that they can't return to the office and a new CEO is coming in? Would you be able to very quickly replace all of the instances of your CEO's image, video, or voice with the new person? How likely are you to be able to do that? Not very. Anyone?
Not at all.
Yeah, I did have this happen. So it's a question I'm asking because it really did happen. someone took some training and unfortunately, the CEO passed away suddenly. And the person who took the training was very upset, just emotionally upset that they're watching this video and this training and couldn't concentrate on the training, didn't absorb the training, couldn't pass the test in the training because the CEO, someone that she admired, respected, worked with for a long time, was in this training. It wasn't caught when we replaced all of the other images and video of the CEO because we didn't know it existed. We didn't know that there was this piece out in our LMS that still had his stuff on it. So the same kind of question, if you are in charge of all of your files and you're on your way to work and you get into a car accident and you're not able to get into work for the next 6 months because you're hurt. You're off work for 6 months. You can't pick up a phone, you can't talk, you can't use a computer. Maybe you have an eye injury, you can't see. Are the people on your team going to be able to pick up your work where you left off and be able to work with your files, find your training, run your reports? Is that possible?
I
For
can answer.
me-
For me, my files are set up very similar to yours, and they're on a shared drive. And so anything I'm working on is visible to anybody who has access to that shared drive.
Perfect. That's awesome. Janet, how about you? I know
Yeah,
you
I
started.
mean, I'm kind of in the same situation where we have like a work in progress folder where everything lives. And then as it gets approved, it moves to a different location. But having said that, doing a project right now where I picked up from a person that has left the company, and I was confused because the information wasn't matching what I was expecting. And it turns out that there was a hidden folder somewhere that had the real source information. And I just found that today. And the person who was aware of it, I just said, is there any more hidden gems that I should know about?
Look at it as an Easter egg. At least you found it. You're lucky you found it. So it's quite possible, that we don't think about it. We work the way we work. We have our file system on our computer and we work away and we save our files, and we don't think about having that content available or ready, or what to do if next year, after that file's already been up on the LMS and somebody needs to make updates, how quickly can we find it? So we don't always think about those things when we're in the moment, because a lot of the time we're pressed to complete the training, get it up on the LMS, get the employees through the training, and that's our goal, right? To complete the training and have people taking the training. So we know this could happen to you. I think this could happen to you. Either one of those scenarios could very easily happen to you. And how you go about dealing with it, I think, from this point forward, and Janet, it sounds like you've been through this, so now you're probably starting to think about, well, what can I do to prevent that from happening next time? What can I do the next time I know someone's moving on to another role? How can I ensure that I have all their stuff? So start thinking about that, start capturing those ideas.
I thought I did.
Well, you have only 1 or 2 new things to add. Hidden files is one of them. Files and folders, right?
Right.
Where's everything? So when I say the term review cycle, thinking of our learning and thinking of, a review cycle, that we should use review cycles. What do you think of when I say that? What does it mean to you?
Well, for me, I guess where I was going with that was, is it being used? So how many times are people actually hitting this content and looking for information? Because if nobody's using it, it's just taking up space.
Fabulous. Good answer. Anybody else? Angel?
We have a periodic review where it's funny, we don't really look at people are using it, but there's an owner and we send them the materials and ask them, is this up to date?
Awesome. Awesome. What else does review cycle mean? Anything?
I think about the back and forth with the internal client as the project is being created. So I kind of think of those words in about a project that's in process, although we should think about it about the projects that aren't in process.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So there are, in my opinion, in learning and development, two major review type cycles. There are the content creation review cycles where we are creating our resources, our e-learning, our ILT, our PDFs or performance improvement materials that are being worked on with a subject matter expert. They're being approved. There's a cycle where we say, hey, can you approve the script? Script is approved. Hey, can you listen to the narration and approve the narration? Narration's approved. Hey, can you look at the prototype? Hey, can you look at the storyboard? Give me a functional review and tell me everything works and all the buttons click. There's that kind of review, but then there is the content overall, overarching content review. We actually can look at this as part of a governance structure, a governance process. And that would mean that you are doing those things, like you said, Janet and Angel, looking at the information in the system. When was it last used? Who's using it? Is it current? All of those things. So we're going to talk about that this evening because we do have content everywhere. Things you have to think about are, where is your content stored? Do you know where all of your content is stored? Do you know where all the source files are? Who's in charge of them? Who can access them? Because if somebody's off sick for a long-term illness and you have to go and work on their files because you have to update something, can you access their files? How do you go about getting permission for their access? Can you have shared access in your environment? I'm working with a client now who we can't have that. There's no way to have a shared connection. Files are files and kind of nobody else's. It's in a little safety box. It's important. I know I've heard this already this evening. Who owns it? If we don't know who owns it, how do we know who to go to ensure that the content is up to date? The content has an owner, a division, a department, someone who's going to take responsibility and accountability for what's in that course. Is there anything else you would consider when thinking about an overall kind of learning content review? LMS might be one thing. You run your reports and see what else there is. Is there anything else you can think of that I might not have captured? Beverly, are you?
Due to accreditation, I have to create an annual training plan. And so our various service lines, we look at what training is assigned to the various staff in our various service lines. And it's at that point that if we have to make any adjustments or changes to content, if it's our content, that's when we could do it. A lot of our content is on our LMS. It's a library, a purchase library. But if it's something that we own, it's at that point. So that's exactly what I'm doing right now. The training plan went into effect July 1. And so for every one of our service lines, I'm looking at the content to make sure that it meets the needs that they identified when we put the plan together.
That's fantastic. And that's an annual process for you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I know it's a lot of work.
That's what he said. I don't know how wonderful it is.
It is. No, you know what? It is wonderful because you're looking at something. I wasn't even going to talk about it, but you're looking at something that is really mission critical for some organization, and that is ensuring that what's supposed to be taught is being taught in the lessons. So while I was going to talk loosely about that. That's not a topic I would have really talked about because I would look only at changes for this evening's discussion. But I think that's really important. And for people who are going to be watching this afterwards, I think that's a great, great tip for you to look through, and not just after we're done this session, don't just look at the things I've talked about, but make sure you're looking at the content as a whole instead of just what's changed. So that's fantastic. I had another good this happened to you, but we know already. So documenting your current state. If you don't know where your content is, do you know who to go to try to find the content? Do you know all the different applications that you use to create the learning? So we've already heard Storyline mentioned, but maybe somebody uses Captivate or Camtasia. Maybe it's all PowerPoint presentations for instructor-led training. Do you know who you would go to access that information if you needed it?
So I've been dealing with that recently with, there was an engineer, or actually more product manager, who left the organization, who had done a lot of the documentation. And there's a new tech writer who keeps sending me documents asking me if they came from training. They did not. Who owns them? And in some cases it was her. So also in the file system now, if she was the owner, how do you get a hold of it? So that is definitely another one of those real life things.
Yeah. Yep. It happens in the moment, and then you have to deal with it, learn from it, and make sure that you remember it for the next time. So think about documenting if you don't already. Beverly, I think it was you that already has the process in place, right? You might not have to do this. But document your current state. Document things like, where can I find my training? Who can I go to? What are the file names? What's the naming convention that we use for our training? And if you don't have something, it's probably a good idea to start creating a naming convention as part of your content governance. Because naming conventions can help you find things in a very busy SharePoint site or hard drive on your server, on my server. Document the division that might own that content, and document as much as you can. And hopefully you'll be able to start creating records of information. So other considerations are what is in use now, which we've talked about. Are people using it? Who is using it? Which audience is it for? Is it for a specific audience? Is it for all of your staff, a specific subset of staff? Does the training expire? And this is one of the reasons why I talk about this whole process of cleaning out your learning closet, because training can, especially when it's compliance training or it's legislated training, that training can expire. That means it's old, it's outdated, and it's not of value to anyone. Then if they take that, it might actually put you at risk for a lawsuit, an injury. So we want to make sure that if there's expired training, that you either make it inactive in your LMS and then archive the content. But if it's expired, do you need to go in and update that training? Is there new legislation that you need to add to it? Who needs to review it? So there's a lot of stuff you need to know about that course and that content. It's a little bit rough to start sort of in the middle, but if you start in the middle of the process where maybe you have a compliance course for what's just changed up here. I think there was a new law. There's, you know what, there's a helmet law that's just changed up here. So we have a very large Indian population here. And so there is a recent law that's changed that helmets don't need to be worn if someone is wearing a turban. So that is a law that's gone into force. We need to ensure if we're doing any kind of driver training that we have that information updated in our training. You could start the process of reviewing and capturing and documenting from this example, because it's probably going to be the most realistic example of what you'll find. You're making something inactive in the LMS. You're looking for the new laws, you're updating it in the course. You'll be asking someone to go through their regular review cycle and get sign off. You're going to capture the sign off in some kind of a document. I've started recently using Adobe Sign, so that once somebody's gone through my course, I send them an Adobe Sign. Yes, they've signed off on the course. There are no changes, and I can start developing. And then once I've developed it, same thing. They go through the course. I send them an Adobe Sign. They sign off on it. That's all captured. That's all kept. It's a record. Who signed off the content? You might need to know that if something happens, right? You know, who said this was okay to say, and who said this was the medication that's administered? You can go back and you have that sign off. Capture when it needs to be updated again. So if you have something that regularly expires or gets updated, maybe you have some kind of water treatment. So up here, I know that the water treatment plant staff members have to go through every year or every 2 years, depending on where they work in the treatment plant. They have to go through a certification program, and they have to retake the training, but the training gets updated based on what changes in legislation there are. So on a regular basis, that's being updated. We already know that has to happen because it's a forced government requirement. Who's the owner? We've talked about that. It's really important to know who's going to own the training, who owns this material, who do we go to get all of this information I'm talking about, because I'm not going to know about compliance changes unless I'm the person who's responsible for it. And then where is everything stored? So it's really important that we keep everything together. That's why I have a file structure like I have. Keep everything together so that we don't lose anything and everything is always in the same place. That way, if all you have to do is update a PDF, you know where to go to get that PDF. You can update it and republish the file without too much of an issue. What other considerations do you think we should think about when we're looking at building a content review cycle for our learning? Anything? I'm going to do a new share here. I'm going to share this document. Okay, so hopefully, wait, let me move our people out of the way. I'm going to move this too. Okay, can you see this whole document? I have created a link to this document for you, and I will show it to you. You can take a picture of it. Josh, I'll send you the link. This is a Google spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, so that you can start capturing things. This is the base idea for you. I started this document with my first presentation like this back in 2019. And as I've gone through and as I've done this presentation, we've added some more fields, and there have been some things that people have said, oh, we need to do this. And I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. So here is a spreadsheet that you can use to start capturing either your current state so that you can work to the future, or you can look in, instead of looking at current state, you can start with what's in the LMS. And you might want to do it that way. What's in the LMS, and start from alphabetical or date input, however you would like to do that. So we would want to have the course name. The one thing missing here is a course short code. If you have a course short code, which you might have. your learning object ID for your learning management system. So what's the course code for the learning management system? What version is it? Are we working off of version 8? When was the file published last? When was it initially created, if we know? When do we have to do a future review? So this could be 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. If you document this, you can filter this list, look for the things that are coming up in the next 30 or 60 or 90 days, and then you can be proactive about communicating what needs to be updated to whomever is responsible for this material. Or if you're going to be updating the content, and you can send out an email to somebody to ask them to review the content, give you updates, make sure everything's still good for this year, and then you can bump that up again for the next time it needs to be reviewed. Who's the owner? Might be one person, might be 2 people. The department they're in. Who is required to take the course? Who's the SME? Might not be the owner. There might be separate subject matter experts. What are their contact information that we have? Do we have anything for them on file? Do we have any additional linked materials that we need to have listed with this course? And so what I will often do is, if I know I have materials for this course, I will add in a second, third, or fourth line, depending on the different materials that go with the course. So if there is an external video or a PDF, a workbook, I will add a line underneath the module to capture that information so that I have everything all aligned, but all together with that same code. So all I have to do is filter the code and I have all the information that I need. Where are the source files? So if we can document either a link to the folder or a rough idea of where the source files are. It's really easy now to share folder links, especially on OneDrive, Google Drive, SharePoint. Super easy to do that. The file names of any source files, if you have something that you have to include with this, what source files do you have? What are their names? Where do you find them? So that you can, if you don't have a folder structure, you at least know where to go to get those pieces. Here's an example. Let's say you're doing an employee orientation. You have a video of products and services that was made by the marketing department. You might not own that. It's a source file that has to be included in the module. So you might want to name that and where it came from. Review cycle, how often, not just the date, but how often do you need to review this? So if you know that you have to do it annually, or if you know that it has to be done by the 1st of July, do you have any videos? And this is important because if we run into a situation like I had, where the CEO passed away, then we can look for videos with the CEO in them. And we can quickly find all of the courses with the video with that person in them. It's going to be important for you to come up with some kind of convention that's consistent for entering the information into the cells. This is just something for you to think through and to maybe talk through with your team or the other stakeholders in your learning area to make sure that you're not missing anything and that you've thought through what and how you should capture everything. Is there a narrator? And so if you're like me, you do a lot of e-learning and you have narration, if a piece of legislation changes 2 or 3 years later, do we really want to have to redo all of the narration in a course because we have a piece that needs to be replaced? Can we contract with the original narrator? So for me, it's really important that I capture who's the narrator and how do I get in touch with them? And then any staff in the content, are there videos or images of real staff that may need to be replaced at some time? So if somebody does something, maybe they commit fraud, they're released from duty, you want to replace them with somebody else. So it's good to think through situations that might need your attention. is there anything that you think you need captured that isn't on this spreadsheet? The last time I did this, someone said prerequisites or anti-requisites. So if there's a prerequisite to this course, what is it? Because if this course changes, maybe the prerequisite also has to change.
I don't know if you're showing software interfaces. Sometimes if those change, it's kind of like the staff change, because I ran into that in a previous job. We were doing training for Microsoft. So every time Microsoft came out with a new version, we were making new screen captures or whatever, right? So
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Let's add that one in here. Capitals, software, program, interface, and what you call that version? It's like Word 2000 and Word. Would that be that would be a version, right?
I think it's version.
Little brain stumper there. Anything else? Anything else you think is missing? Okay. Did that give you something to think about? Did it give you a place to start capturing your training and how it looks right now and sort of how you need it to look for the future?
It made me think that for myself, I'm kind of, even though I don't work for myself, I'm in a way a department of one, and would probably need a whole nother person that is not budgeted for, who would take care of this kind of detail of saving. On the flip side, though, I think, you know, it's fabulous, but I think absent this level of organization, like, stuff happens, and I'm thinking of your CEOs, the deaths, you know, something's going to get overlooked, and hopefully it's not something that's enormously important. You know, and I think you have to like give yourself a little slack.
You do have to give yourself some grace. I think that even just starting with the next course you do, start fresh put that first course in there, get it in, get it captured, add the next one in, and then as you have time, if you have time, I know that's really challenging in some of our training departments, but if you have time, go back and work on something else, like pull something else in, or do maybe one piece of a program at a time, so it's not quite so big and daunting. Okay, come back here. Move us out of the way here. So here is the QR code for that document. Josh, I will send you the link so that you can include that. But if you would like to take a picture of that, capture that, do a screenshot of it and save it for later, you can do that. Give you a moment. Okay. So other things that you should consider when you're looking at spring cleaning your learning closet are reduce, reuse, and archive. Can you ensure there is no duplication in the system? Can you reuse any content that might be in there in other modules? So that you don't have to create something new. And this is about, you know, when that training request comes in, or when somebody says, hey, we need training on such and such, you can go to the LMS or go to the spreadsheet. You can search for the content. You can add a description into the spreadsheet so that you can search by the description even, and just make sure that you're not duplicating something that's already in the LMS. There's nothing worse than going into the LMS, being that employee who goes into the LMS and who's looking for WMIS training or hazmat training and being shown 5 different courses and not knowing which one is the one that I'm supposed to take, right? So if you can reduce duplication, if you can reuse content rather than create new, and try your best to, if you're not the LMS person responsible, encourage people responsible to archive the old content that's invalid or that's been updated so that it's out of the system. And that way you don't have anybody going back and watching that old video or looking at that old file. In the long run, it's really going to protect you. And that leads us into discussing governance. What is governance? And governance is a system of guidelines and requirements and approvals for the content that goes into your system. That starts with a training request that comes in, or maybe someone coming and saying, here's the PowerPoint that we created. We need you to create this training. Doing your instructional design, doing your development, but making sure that whatever is created within the guidelines required to publish successfully to whatever platform it is you're publishing to. So if it's a learning management system, if it's a WordPress site, if it's an internal SharePoint site, making sure that your file names are correct, your course has a course code or a course number, and that it's correct, that there's a contact person if there's problems with the training, whatever it is that you need, your governance standards should help you or help someone else define the kind of things that go in the system and how they go in so that you're meeting the needs. Like I have an organization who won't put anything into the learning management system if every field in the LMS intake form isn't filled out. So we might have a working file, we might need to test it in the sandbox. They won't put it into the sandbox even without us completing the form. And one of the pieces on the form is, how long is this valid? How long is this little SCORM file that we're putting into the learning management system valid, so that they can go in and they can take it out or archive it, make it inactive when it's no longer valid. So if you don't have a governance system in place already, you might want to consider thinking about what you would need to do to create the standards and guidelines for what's needed for a training request, what's needed for you to be able to create the training, and what's needed for tracking. The other thing you might want to consider also is what kind of reporting you need to have for each of the modules or each of the things that you're creating. If you have to do some kind of reporting, especially for the government, when they come in and they want to see who's done the training, make sure that you've got that all organized in advance and detailed out what kind of training reports might be required. Any questions on that so far? I feel like I've gone through and sailing through. So why governance matters? You might be asking yourself, well, why does it really matter if we have a governance structure in place? Well, it matters. The structure is what it looks like, and that structure is going to be the same for everything that goes in the system. So you're looking at ensuring that there is reliability from one item to the next, that everything is going to match up to the way that it should. A governance system also identifies the roles and responsibilities of people who are responsible for the training, for updating the training, for ensuring the training works in the LMS, for doing the reviews. It's a process flow. So what happened or what needs to happen and when. For instance, we don't put anything into a sandbox without testing it in SCORM Cloud, as an example. We don't start development without a signed approval. So, you know, the governance structure helps you identify what needs to be done when. And there's a process to how everything is done. And then there's the standards, and those are the rules or the policy or guidelines that you have to adhere to ensure that your content in your learning management system or in your learning repository is current and up to date and follows your guidelines. So now, because we all want to, I don't know about you. I say we all want to. I don't know about you. So let me ask you, do you get a seat at the table when it comes to helping solve L&D problems across your organization, or are you an order taker? Josh, are you smiling at that question?
I recently spoke to a former speaker of ours who is writing a book on the topic.
Yeah.
I will say my general experience has been that most of the time people expect us to be order takers, and if there is not pushback, then you will be an order taker. And even sometimes when there is pushback, you still become an order taker because you get overruled.
Yeah.
Later to snicker and say you were right, but you know, I'd rather not that be the case.
I agree.
Well, yeah, I do. I agree with you. Janet agrees with you. Yes. So I would like to give you some food for thought. And that is that this process here that we've just gone through of creating this learning content governance sheet, helping to have governance in place, tracking when things are going to be expiring, can help you find a way to get to the table. And it does it by being a good customer service person, really, because that's what this part of the process is all about. You are being a customer service representative for the employee, for the department, for the owner, for the organization, but most importantly, you're being a customer service representative for training and development. So when something in the sales department is starting to come due, or it's been in the system for a while, you can proactively send out an email to the owner of that course and say, hey, the course has been up on the system for X amount of time. Now, I'm going to say some things and not everybody is going to have time to do this. And I totally understand that. But if you have an opportunity, you can run a report. You can see how many people have taken the course over the duration that it's been on the learning management system. How many people passed? How many people failed? How many attempts did they have at the quiz? So there are a number of pieces of information that your learning management system might capture that could be really important metrics for that department. And they didn't even think about that, right? They didn't think about the fact that if 40% of the people are getting the same 5 questions wrong, maybe there's an issue with the question, maybe there's an issue with the content, and it's time to review that content, get it updated, make sure that it's appropriate, and help the employees. Now you're being their advocate, right? Help the employee be more catered to in their learning and what they need. Okay, so master the follow-up. That's what that sheet's going to allow you to do. So if you start tracking, you'll be able to start getting into the departments. Hopefully what happens is that with your regular connections to these departments or to the course owners, they're going to start thinking, it might be an opportunity to say, hey, do you have anything else coming down the pipeline? Anything else that our department needs to be aware of? Any issues, anything, any new products coming out, so that you can be prepared. They can start thinking, oh, I should really talk to Janet. Janet might need to know that we've got this going on. And we can start to have a more powerful impact on the organization. So the tools that I use for a lot of what I do in terms of my governance structure and helping my clients have a governance structure, are the spreadsheet. It's not always this spreadsheet. Sometimes it's their own spreadsheet, but it's always a spreadsheet. I have email templates that I create and I use with my Outlook, so that all I have to do is go into my new template, find the course review template, I just fill it in with the course name, a link to the course on the LMS, and send it to the person that it is supposed to be sent to. Everything else is kind of written of what's expected of them in this course review, so that they just basically have to return the email to me, fill in all the fields, and I have all the updated information I need for that course. I use my calendar for follow-ups, so that if I know that there's going to be a course that's coming due for renewal July 1st, then I'm going to put in a follow-up for July 1st. It's just a little task in my calendar, and it lists all of the items that I have to follow up on for courses for that day. I also use project management software. I use something called ClickUp. I've used Asana in the past. And what I do is, as I'm working through my projects and as I'm working through updating for my clients, I will assign myself and my person I'm working with, whether it's the subject matter expert or the course owner, might be a single point of contact at an organization. And I assign them the task as well, what needs to be done, so that we're both on the same page. Some people use Trello boards. I used to use Trello, but I've gone to my ClickUp. I have my shared drives and SharePoint and my server. What else? I think that's it. What about you? What kinds of things do you think what kind of tools would you use, or are you using to capture these requests?
So we are currently using Trello board just to track the review process for content creation. It's been a real time saver for me. And I could export all that tracking information to keep track of like the SMEs and the managers and the approvals. So that works. And we don't get rid of any cards, which becomes problematic. I think we're really going to have to develop like a done board to move things off, because it does get slow the more cards you have on a board.
How many people do you have using a board at a time?
Right now, I'm probably up to 8 people.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a really good tip.
Yeah,
Anybody
I mean,
else?
it's been good for us.
Perfect. Awesome. Anybody else have any tools that you're using that are a little different that you want to share and give some motivation?
Not beyond what's on the list.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Okay, so that's it, really. I encourage you to go out, clean up your closet as best you can. Try to track your information. Try to be a good corporate citizen. Be proactive. Be a good customer service person. Connect with me on the socials. I'm at Jack Hutchinson. I think I'm Jack Hutchinson 777, I think, on LinkedIn. You should be able to find me. Or you can email me, Jacqueline@e-learningpro.com. And I'm always happy to hear from people. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for going through this. A lot of good stuff here. Or, I'm realizing more and more the importance of the organization, the folder structure piece we talked about at the beginning specifically. And, I think I wasn't expecting the server lesson, but I think that especially when, you are responsible for all of your data and you are the IT department, it's something that comes up. So good information all around. Anybody have any additional questions here? Beverly likes your spreadsheet, so good feedback there.
Consider it yours. Take it, do what you want with it, save a copy of it, and it's yours. It's there for sharing. It's there for working on. If you have some great ideas, share with L&D Philly. Maybe after a while, y'all can talk about what changes you've made to your spreadsheets and what you found to be valuable to add to it.
I'll tell you, let's do this. I'm going to stop the recording, especially if any of the questions are questions that we don't want on recording. And for those who are watching the recording, they know where to reach out to you. So we'll call it with that. And thank you.
Thank you.